Hey guys, welcome to the video. Salt here. Today we're going to be going over the Warframe Ember Prime. So Ember Prime was suggested to us by commenter Paper Trail. That's why we're doing her today. We have the top commenter of the last video, Andrew Grossman, and the first commenter of the last video, Noble Squid. Alrighty, let's get into Ember Prime here. What I want to do first is I want to go over her abilities, and then we can get into the mods after that. So let me get my papers together here. And so we'll go over the passive first. So she receives 5% ability strength for every enemy within 50 meters affected by heat status effects. She's a caster Warframe. She's heat themed. You're going to have a lot of status effects around you that are heat. So this combos perfectly with Ember. It's you know, perfect for her. So something to know about this though is where the little tracker is for this is in the bottom right of your screen above your thermometer. So when we talk about the abilities, we'll get to the 2, and the 2 puts a little thermometer on your screen, and above the thermometer there's another little icon that'll actually track like how much % your ability strength is at. So you can kind of keep track of it there if you want. You don't have to. All right, we'll go over the 1 here. So the 1 is actually not Embers, it is Wisps, but we're going to be using this as a subsume onto Ember. It is Breach Surge. Let's go over Breach Surge. It's going to blind enemies in range. Blinded enemies have a 10% chance on damage to release a spark, or a 100% chance on death to release a spark. Sparks are homing projectiles that seek the heads of enemies within 10 meters. And they deal radiation damage equal to the damage dealt to the first surged enemy, and then multiplied by X amount, which is like based on your ability strength there. So Breach Surge is pretty good for Ember. Now the 2, the 3, and the 4 are there's a lot to it for Ember. It gets a little bit complicated. This is like, I don't know how many takes I've had to do this video in because I've screwed this up. So let's try to go over the 2 here. Immolation. You get a thermometer display on the bottom right of your screen, and you get damage reduction based on the heat level of that thermometer. That damage reduction is not going to be that important for us. We're a shield gating build, and so we don't really care too much about the damage reduction, but Immolation and that little thermometer have synergistic effects to Ember's 3 and her 4. So we'll talk about those synergistic effects when we get to them. So one more thing about the 2 and Immolation is that at max heat, so when your little thermometer is all the way at the top, it's going to start draining energy per second. And the more it stays at like max heat, it's going to start draining more and more energy per second. And there's no cap to that. So it could actually get out of control. Depending on your efficiency. If you run really good efficiency, it's going to take a little bit longer for it to get out of control. But it'll eventually get out of control. And so if it ever gets too crazy and you need to reset it, you just reset it. You just press the 2 button again to turn it off. And then you press 2 again to turn it on. And then it'll be reset to its normal values. Okay, so that's enough for Breach Surge and Immolation. Let's go over Fire Blast next. You're going to slam the ground, creating a heat wave that expands outwards. Enemies take heat damage with a 100% status chance, have their armor perma-stripped, and get knocked down and pushed back. That armor stripping is going to be dependent on your thermometer level of your 2. So if your thermometer is closer to the top, like at max, it's going to be a bigger strip, more strip, possibly a full strip, depending on your strength and whether or not you're using corrosive projection or not. And if it's closer towards the bottom of that little thermometer, it's not going to be a full strip. It might be like a half strip or whatnot, depending on how you build your Ember out. Synergy with the 2 from Fire Blast is each cast of Fire Blast reduces heat generation by 2% per second and removes 50% of heat. And this is going to cost less the higher the heat that your thermometer is. So if you're at high heat, it's going to be very cheap to cast this. So this is kind of like your cool off button. You're cooling off your thermometer with this. The other thing to go over with Fire Blast is the Augment. We're going to be using the Augment Healing Flame. Each enemy hit with your 3 is going to heal you for 25 to 50 health. And overhealing grants Overguard. So the Overguard is what we're more focused on for our build. Okay. So that was Fire Blast. Now we're going to be going over Inferno next here. There is like a million things to all of Ember's abilities. They're very annoying. Okay. Inferno. Ember summons meteorites on enemies in a 67.5 degree cone. So this is not 360. You kind of have to somewhat intelligently aim this. And enemies that get hit are going to take impact and heat damage with a 100% heat status chance. Enemies hit are surrounded by a ring of fire for X seconds, depending on your duration, which grows in size and deals heat damage and status per second. Rings will spread to unaffected enemies, creating new rings. And new rings will have their duration restarted, basically. Not the old rings. The old rings will stay on their old duration, but the new rings will have like a new duration. But dudes can only be affected by a ring 1 time per cast. So like this can't just keep itself like permanently active. Like you do have to recast this. The cost of this ability is 0 to 100 energy, depending on the amount of enemies in range. So if there's no enemies, this is going to cost 0 energy. And there is a reason to cast this even if there's no enemies. And it's because this increases your thermometer heat generation by 3%. So remember, the 2 decreased it by 2%. This is increasing it by 3%. So you might want to increase your heat generation to get to higher levels for more synergistic effects. So the cost is 0 to 100 energy. And it's capped at 100 energy, which is 10 energy per dude hit, which would make you think that this can only affect 10 dudes, but it can affect as many dudes as that's in your range that it hits. It can hit 30 dudes. It's just that you're only ever going to be charged in energy for the cost of 10 dudes. All right, and synergy for this is Inferno Cast, raise immolation heat generation by 3% per second. We already said that. And you get more damage depending on your heat level. So if you're at a higher level with your little thermometer, it's going to do more damage. I think if you're at max thermometer, it's double damage for your Inferno. So those are the abilities. I have Other Salt out in the field. He's just going to show these abilities off real quick. I'm going to have timestamps as well, so if you're not interested in looking at the abilities, you can always skip ahead. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to Other Salt here. Here we go, guys. Hey, guys. Other Salt here. I'm sure Salt went over all that nerd shit that he usually does, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to show the abilities off here in the Simulacrum. So we'll start with the 1 first, which is going to be Breach Surge. Here we go. This is the one, like Salt was saying, puts little sparks on people's faces. It's going to make them blind. When they take damage, there's a 10% chance that the spark flies off and hits something else in the head. And when they die, there's a 100% chance that spark flies off and hits something else in the head. So it didn't look very impressive there, and that's because you kind of have to like combine it with actual damage. So I'm going to cast my 1 and my 4, and you'll see kind of what it does. So they're all blind. Now I'm going to cast my 4, and now you can start seeing those little sparks are hopping around and just hitting dudes over and over again. So kind of like a little popcorn machine there. Okay. So let's go over the 2 next. The 2 is going to be called Immolation. It's going to give you a thermometer in the bottom right of your screen. Oop, right there. So what that does is it gives us damage reduction based on where that thermometer is. We don't really care about that too much on our build because our build is a shield getting build, so the damage reduction we don't really care about at all. But the synergy that it has with the 3 and the 4 we do care about. So that's why we use it. Okay. So now the 3 we're going to go over. The 3 is called Fire Blast. Going to go ahead and cast it here. It's going to do some heat damage. It's going to knock some dudes down. And it's also going to strip their armor depending on where your little thermometer is. So if your thermometer is closer to high heat, it's going to be doing more strip. And if it's closer to the bottom, it's going to do less strip. Nowadays, even partial strip is really good. So, you know, don't feel bad that if you have to press it when you're only at, like, I don't know, like 70% or something. It's still going to do pretty damn good. Now, the synergies that this has with the 2 is that it is going to cost less energy to cast depending on how high your heat is. So the higher the heat, the cheaper it is to cast. And it's also going to reduce your heat by 50%, and it's going to reduce the heat generation by 2%. So it kind of cools you down, you could think of it. It cools you down. All right. Now we're going to cast the 4, which is the big one here, called Inferno. Inferno's a cone, so I can't just like shoot it this way. It won't do anything to the dudes behind me. So I have to actually aim it kind of at it, dude. It's what is it? A 67.5% cone? I don't know what the hell that is. Or 5-degree cone, I should say. 67.5-degree cone. So I'm going to cast it here. It's going to do a bunch of damage. It's going to apply heat procs, and it's going to put these like heat swirlies on enemies. And those swirlies are going to get bigger and bigger. And if they hit other dudes, they're going to infect other dudes with those heat swirlies. But dudes can only ever be affected by 1 swirly per cast. So like it can't just like infinitely keep itself active. But it is still pretty damn good there. Now the synergies to Inferno with the 2 is that the it's going to increase your heat generation by 3% per second. And it's going to get more damage depending on how hot you are. So like right now I'm at 90%, which is the max heat. So it'll do more damage here. And if I wanted to cool down, I would just press my 3 again. And that starts cooling me down a bit. All right. I think that's pretty much all the abilities there. Another thing I wanted to show, just because Salt will eventually go over this, is the external we're going to be using with Ember, which is the Grimoire. There's 2 ways to shoot the Grimoire. You can shoot it like you're a little wizard with your just normal abilities. And you just cast little wizard bolts. And then you can hold the... Or not hold, you actually just press this. You can just press Alt-click or the middle mouse button. Boop. And it shoots a ball out. And that ball, depending on what it hits or what it kills, is going to give you a buff. And that's why we use it with Ember, because that buff is very powerful with Ember. But you can't alt-click all the time. Look at this. I can't press it. And it's because that you see that little charge bar in the middle? That little bar has to be filled up for me to alt-fire. Now, all you have to do to fill that charge bar up is hit dudes. I hit dudes and it starts charging up. And now I can alt-fire again. And I hit dudes and it charges up. And then I can alt-fire. So there's different ways you can build out the Grimoire. You can build it out for damage. That way, like, the dudes you're hitting are actually... taking a good amount of damage, or you could just build it out to charge your alt fire and like go max fire rate with it. So there's a bunch of different ways you can build the Grimoire, but I just kind of wanted to show that there, is that you'll be mostly alt firing it to get your buffs. And then when it's time to, when you want that buff again, because the buff I believe it only lasts for like 20 seconds, you just make sure you're getting filled up, topped off, and then you can recast it. All right, I think that's pretty much everything. I'm going to bring you back over to Salt there. Let me make sure I do a little wave. That way he knows we're done. All right. All right, we should be back here, guys. So we're going to be going over the mods next for Ember. Okay, and we're going to start with Augur Secrets. Augur Secrets is going to give us 24% ability strength. And we have an added effect of 40% energy spent on abilities is converted to shields. We have a shield gating build, so that effect is pretty good for us. Our shields are very low because we're also going to be using catalyzing shields. And so even a small amount of energy converted to shields is going to pretty much going to be topping us off, or very close to it, one or the other. There is a few options for this slot, and there's a few options for the aura slot as well. So we're going to get that bottom effect, the energy spent converted to shield, in one way or the other. There's an aura that also does a similar thing. So there's different ways you could flop these 2 slots out. So I'll go over that at the end. We'll go over all the other mods first here. Equilibrium is going to be giving us health pickups, give 110% energy, and energy pickups gives 110% health. So that's good for Ember. She needs a lot of energy. Overextended is going to be giving us ability range and negative ability strength. The range is very good. The negative strength kind of sucks, but we're going to be recouping it in other ways. Prime Flow is going to give us a increased energy pool to use, which is important for Ember. Catalyzing Shield is going to help with the shield gate. Transient Fortitude is going to be increasing our ability strength, and it's going to be giving us negative ability duration. Ember's kit doesn't care too much about duration. The only time you really need to care about duration is if you choose to go with Roar as a subsume. So Roar is another very powerful subsume on Ember, but it makes you value duration a little bit more than Ember usually wants to value it. Ember doesn't value duration very much unless you go with Roar. So Roar changes the build up significantly. So that's why we go with Breach Surge, because it kind of just stays in line with all the other things that Ember values as far as stats go, which is strength and range and efficiency. All right, we have Archon Vitality. It's going to give us 100% health, and it's going to give us more heat procs whenever we apply a heat proc. Healing Flame is the augment. We already went over this one. In the aura slot, we're going to get Corrosive Projection. Corrosive Projection gets us to a full strip more consistently. If you're pressing your 3 and you're at like minimum heat value with your little thermometer, you're probably still not going to full strip. But this will let you actually like press it when you're not at max and still be full stripping. Ember, because her thermometer moves like, you know, up and down depending on like what buttons you're pressing, you're not always consistently full stripping, but this makes it a little bit more consistent. Again, this slot as well as Augur Secrets have options to change them, and I'll go over that in a bit here. Power Drift is going to be in the Exilus slot for 15% ability strength. There are also some options for this slot as well. So Power Drift gives you 15% ability strength. Ember likes strength, that's nice. Cunning Drift gives you 15% ability range. Well, Ember wants range too, so that's also nice. But Power Drift and Cunning Drift are kind of small, right? That's only 15%. It's not a huge amount. Primed Sure-Footed, I typically don't like. I feel like it's a crutch that you can kind of learn to live without. But in this case, because Power Drift and Cunning Drift don't necessarily like make us hit any kind of meaningful breakpoints, they're good to have. They just don't make us hit any kind of breakpoints. I feel like Prime Sure-Footed is a valid choice for the Exilus slot in this case. The other thing to consider is Coaction Drift if you're using Corrosive Projection. So if you're using Corrosive Projection, Coaction Drift can increase that enemy lose X amount of armor to a larger amount. I forgot exactly what it brings it to. So Coaction Drift is also pretty decent. So any of those four, they're all pretty good. Prime Sure-Footed is questionably the best, I would say. I hate saying that because I usually try not to use it, but everything else is a very small upgrade. Okay, so before we go over the arcanes, let's go over these two slots here and what could go here. So for the aura, Corrosive Projection is very good. It makes your full stripping a little bit more consistent on Ember, but Brief Respite is really good on shield gating builds. This is kind of like Augur Secrets in that it converts energy to shields. So it's a very good mod. So you would use this in the aura instead of Corrosive Projection. And in that case, you don't really need Augur Secrets. You could take Augur Secrets off. And in this slot, the options would be Streamline. Streamline is your safest option. This build will probably feel the comfiest using Streamline, but you don't technically need it. But it will feel very comfy using Streamline right here. It's just that because we're a shield getting build, you want this energy spent converted to shields effect. So if you're going to use Streamline, you need to switch the Corrosive Projection to Brief Respite. The other option would be Stretch. Stretch is going to make your build more powerful. This is going to be the most powerful your build can be is with Stretch, because now you're definitely hitting everything on the friggin' map or what's in front of you. Like even the large tile sets, you're able to hit across the large tile sets. So stretch will give you the most power. Streamline will make it the most comfy. And Augur Secrets with Corrosive Projection is kind of an in-between. Augur Secrets, it's nice to have a little bit more ability strength. We already have a lot, though. But you also get that brief respite effect as well as Corrosive Projection, making it more consistent to fully strip. So any of those options are good for these two slots. There's a lot of options for these two slots, and also the Exilus, like we went over, have a few options. Okay, let's go over Arcanes here. So first Arcane, we're going to go with Molt Augmented. Molt Augmented just gives us a huge ability strength increase. Something to know about Molt Augmented, though, is that it needs to stack, and it sometimes takes like 5 minutes to stack. So if you're only intending to do a 5-minute run and like roll out, you probably don't want to use Molt Augmented. You could pretty much use whatever you want, because at that point, you know, the game's pretty easy at 5 minutes in. But for any kind of endurance content, Molt Augmented is going to be very powerful. You're going to get a lot of ability strength out of it. In the second Arcane slot, we're going to be using Arcane Power Ramp. So on an ability cast, the next ability cast gains 9% ability strength, stacking up to 4 times, and resets when the same ability is recast consecutively. So what does this mean? This means that you get 36% ability strength. This is a 36% ability strength mod, as long as you don't press the same ability twice. Okay, that's it. That's the only conditional with this. You can't press the same ability twice. Well, Ember actually is kind of a rotational Warframe. So the rotation goes 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4. That's all we do. That's all we do all game. 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4. And if we need to reset our immolation because maybe it's getting too out of control, we just reset immolation. But other than that, it's 1, 3, 4 over and over and over again. And because of that, we can keep up Arcane Power Ramp like easily. I think if we shut off immolation by pressing 2 and then turn it back on again, it might count as pressing the same button twice, so that might like negate it, but it'll be right back up to max in like 5 seconds. So yeah, that's the mods. That's the Arcanes. Let's get out of here. So I want to go over some externals for Ember before we get into the gameplay showcase. So let's go over our Archon shards first. Casting speed. Oh my goodness, casting speed is important. So I went with 3 casting speed shards, but I was really tempted to go with 4. I was tempted to go with 4 casting speed shards. So these 3 bottom ones here are all casting speed. I have Tau Forge. You can use whatever you want. These are actually, none of these are absolutely necessary. You can play this build without any Archon shards. They just make it a little bit more comfy. Because Ember, the Breach Surge is a little bit of a long cast. Her 3 is a little bit of a long cast. Her 4 is a little bit of a long cast. So she has a lot of abilities that are kind of like long casts. So casting speed super, super helps, especially since she's an ability frame. Ember is one of the Warframes that you never actually have to even shoot your gun the entire mission, and you could still get a crap load of kills because she's an ability frame. She's like Protea, basically. And so you're casting your abilities like crazy. And so these casting speed shards are super, super helpful. Not needed, but oh my goodness, they're going to make your quality of life so much better. And then in the 2 top ones here, I went with effectiveness on energy orbs. I think 1 effectiveness on energy orbs is nice. Like I said, I was tempted to actually go 4 into casting speed and only have 1 as effectiveness on energy orbs. I ended up going with 2, but you can choose as you want. Again, none of these are absolutely necessary, so you could always switch it around. But I really recommend casting speed shards, though. All right, let's go over weapon externals, and I'm actually going to skip ahead to the 2. Or not the 2, sorry, the secondary. The Grimoire. The Grimoire is Ember's weapon. I went over the weapons trying to see what was the best Ember weapon, and when I got to the Grimoire, I was like, this is it. This is it right here. Okay, so let's take a look at Ember's Grimoire here. Make sure I'm on the right one. Yeah. Okay. So you could build the Grimoire out in multiple ways. So The actual build, don't worry too much about the build. I'm just going to go over a couple of mods that are key for this. Okay? On the Grimoire, you can have one invocation and one canticle. And the invocation and the canticle, well, actually, I guess just the canticle. The canticle counts as an Exilis mod. So it actually can fit over here in the Exilis slot. But Lethal Momentum increases the speed of your alt-fire ball that you shoot out. And so it allows it to go further and hit more enemies. And the amount of enemies hit is what dictates a lot of your buffs. And so Lethal Momentum is very powerful. So I always recommend on Grimoire builds, I recommend an Invocation, a Canticle, and Lethal Momentum. And then just using 6 mod slots for damage. Which is doable if you give up Viral. If you give up Viral and say, okay, I'm just going to hope that I get Viral on my pet. Like my pet's a pet primer, he's going to put Viral on things. I'm just going to assume and hope that he actually puts Viral on my targets. Then it's fine. Then it's like you were building it out for damage, and it's going to do a crap load of damage. It's okay. Okay, let's go over the Netra Invocation. This is very important here. Alternate Fire increases ability efficiency by 4% for 20 seconds for each enemy hit. They don't have to die, they just have to get hit. Stacks up to 15 times. That's 60% ability efficiency. There's an entire Warframe mod that is this, basically. So Netra Invocation for Ember is extremely powerful. All you have to do, and it's a 20-second buff, so all you have to do is once every 20 seconds, press your Alt button or your middle mouse button, wherever your Alt button is. Fast Canticle. There's actually a few Canticles. Let me switch to the Canticles here. We'll go over them. I like the fast one, though. Killing enemies grants allies in affinity range 40% shield recharge and 28% shield recharge delay for 15 seconds. We're a shield gate build, so like this is... I think it's going to help with the shield gate a little bit. I mean, Augur Secrets is probably going to like insta-fill it up anyway, but I feel like Fast Canticle is okay. Like maybe if it doesn't... Maybe if like, you know, Augur Secrets doesn't get it all the way, it'll just like auto-regen the rest of the way with Fast Canticle. But there's other Canticles that are pretty decent too. Like, what is this one here? Yeah, it's a little bit of a weaker one. That's Fire Rate. She doesn't really need Fire Rate. This one here. Enemies have a 12% chance to drop a Universal Orb on death. That's another okay one. I feel like the Croc Canticle or the Fast Canticle are the best. But they're minor increases. It's not like the Netra Invocation. The Netra Invocation is extremely powerful. Oh my goodness, this is so powerful. The Canticle is a little bit weaker because like we have other ways to regen our energy. But this could kind of help. Or you could use Kra to get some Universal Orbs. So that's what's important about the Grimoire, is that you have Netra Invocation, and then whatever of those 2 Canticles you like, make sure you put Lethal Momentum over here. And then the rest, there's different ways you can build out the Grimoire. I have it built out here for damage, where I can actually kill things with it. But if you just wanted to build it out for support, you would literally just put all of the Fire Rate mods in the world on this thing. You'd put Lethal Torrent, whatever other Fire Rate mods you can get. Because the only thing you need to do to charge your Grimoire, that way you can alternate fire, is hit things. You don't actually need to kill things. The only thing that requires kills is Canticles, and the Canticles are a little bit of a weaker effect. So if you didn't really care about the Canticle and you just wanted to do the Invocation, you could just go full Fire Rate. Like, I think there's 3 or 4 Fire Rate mods for secondaries. So it's up to you how you want to do that. I'm probably going to do a Grimoire build eventually, like an actual Grimoire build where I go over a few different setups. But, yeah. That's Ember's little Grimoire there. You're going to make sure to alt-fire every 20 seconds. The primary. Ember is really powerful. Ember kills like everything on the map very well, except for Acolytes. Acolytes are kind of crappy to kill. And so I would recommend bringing a Acolyte killing primary. You could choose whatever you want. I would pick maybe like one of the big heavy dudes, like the big heavy dudes that can take an Acolyte out in like a couple of hits. That's why I went with the Kuva Brahma here. But you can go with like the Dread, you can go with the Paris, like any of those big heavy hitting like 1 or 2 shot Acolyte killers. I like the Brahma because one of the Acolytes has a shield that makes your bullets bounce off unless you have AoE to go through that shield. And so the Brahma kind of like, you know, bypasses that. Otherwise, I would just use the Dread because the Dread is stronger, like per shot. But the Kuba Brahma bypasses that one Acolyte's like little niche. All right, for the melee weapon, because the Grimoire is so powerful in Ember, there's a way to boost up your secondary weapons, and that's with the Furax Wraith. Or the Furax Wraith, doesn't matter. It just has to be a Furax that's able to use this Amalgam mod. It doesn't even matter how the Furax is built. I don't even think I built it out properly. That's okay. It doesn't even have a melee adapter. It doesn't have an Exilis. It don't matter. The only thing that matters is you have this mod right here, Amalgam Furax Body Count, plus 45% fire rate to secondary weapons. That's a fire rate mod for my secondary weapon that's on my melee weapon. That's pretty cool. So the Furax Wraith kind of lets you cheese and get an extra mod for your Grimoire. So I actually have another fire rate mod. So I have Lethal Torrent on my Grimoire, and then I have that 45 fire rate on my Grimoire from my Furax Wraith. For focus schools, oh, there's not really anything that's great. Naramon, if you're trying to go for a melee-focused Ember, you would choose Naramon because it increases combo duration. Or, it doesn't increase combo duration, but it makes them, like, fall off super, super slow. So slow where you could leave your computer, go take a dump, come back, and you still have combo. Like, that's how slow that it decays with Naramon. So if you're a melee build, you choose Naramon. But because we're not a melee build, we're just like an ability spammer. Xenoric, unfortunately, doesn't work with channeled abilities. Her 2 sometimes counts as channeled, sometimes it doesn't. It's weird. It's like a Gloom, basically, that sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. So I wouldn't recommend Xenoric, just because sometimes it won't be working. Vazarin's good if you have abilities that scale on affinity range, which Ember doesn't have any of those. Unairo gives you armor. We're shield gating builds, so we don't care about that. So Matarai is kind of boring. Matarai gives you a really small amount of passive damage. It has some other effects too, that like active effects where you could switch to your operator and give yourself a large amount of damage, but its passive effect is just a really small amount of extra damage. So we're just going to go with Matarai, even though it's kind of boring. In the pet slot here, look how I fashioned this guy. I tried to make him match my Ember. He looks so pretty. Oh my goodness. So in the pet slot, there's 2 good options. There's Death Cube with the Verglis, and there's the Panzerweltpfeile. The Death Cube with the Verglis probably has more DPS potential because it can produce a ridiculous amount of fire procs. I mean, like Ember produces fire procs. Like, dudes are going to have, like, 20 big fire procs on them. But the Verglis can be, like, transferring, like, 400 fire procs onto dudes. It's crazy. They're going to be smaller fire procs, though, and the way fire procs work, that could be an issue. But Verglis could have, or not Verglis, sorry. Death Cube with the Verglis could have more damage potential because of that, because you're transferring over large stacks of heat procs. You get a lot of energy from it, but you also get a lot of energy from your Panzerweltpfeile. I think the Panzerweltpfeile is a little bit better. It's a little bit better as far as viral priming. The Death Cube with the Verglis can also viral prime like pretty well, but not as good as Panzer. So Panzer is more consistent with the viral priming. Panzer, you're also getting Martyr Symbiosis, which gives you more shield gates. So you have your 0.5 second shield gate if you need it from your overshield. You have your normal 1.33 shield gate from catalyzing. And then if for some reason you really screw up, your Panzerweltpfeile can give you a 1 second shield gate with Martyr Symbiosis. So like you have multiple fail safes. So like you don't have this with Death Cube. So yeah, I like Panzer for this case. Also, we get Seismic Bond. Seismic Bond is going to give us 30% more ability efficiency. So our Grimoire is giving us 60% ability efficiency, and Seismic Bond is giving us 30. That's 90% ability efficiency that we don't even have on our Warframe. Like normally to get that, you have to use 2 mod slots. You have to use there's only 2 efficient. I can't remember what they are. Streamline and one of the 60% ones. There's only 2 mods that do efficiency, and we don't have to use any of them. We use Seismic Bond in the Grimoire, and we get 90%. Oh my goodness! And Seismic Bond works because the 2 counts sometimes as a channeled ability, so this will stay active pretty much all the time. So, yep, that is the Panzerweltpfeile there. The other thing you can consider, and if you want to look at more Panzerweltpfeile like in detail or different builds for them, I did a video about a month ago on them. You could always take a look and look at like the gun Panzer or the melee Panzer. But for the ability Panzer, you can also consider taking off Bite and Tenacious Bond and doing some other mods that might help you more in for Ember. This is just going to help my Grimoire, but you might not care about your Grimoire killing, so you could take these two off and put some other stuff there. All right, I think that's everything. That's how you build an Ember Prime. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into a mission and show this off in about 10 minutes, show how she works. Again, she's kind of like rotational. We're going to be pressing our 1, our 3, and our 4, and our 1, and our 3, and our 4, over and over and over again. And recasting our 2 whenever it gets out of control and we're starting to lose energy. Alrighty, I think that's everything. Yep, I think I'm ready. I'm set. I'm ready, set. Ready to go here. Mott, I'm on solo. Steel Path. She starts off a little bit slow. I would recommend maybe like 1 energy pad at the start if you want. You don't have to, but I sometimes do it. I plop an energy pad down. I don't even sit for the whole 3 ticks of it. I just need 1 tick.
Life support has been cut off. They're trying to choke you out.
All right, let's get this little party started here.
Auxiliary life support.
Switch my Grimoire. Try to get some efficiency. We should be rocking and rolling now. One, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4. That door closed. One, 3, 4. I'll let you know too if I have to ever press my 2 again. It will eventually get out of control, but as long as we kind of like maintain this rotation, we won't be at max heat for a super long amount of time, so it doesn't get too much of a chance to go super crazy. You see how much I'm casting though? If you don't have casting speed charts, those 3 abilities are actually kind of long cast. It kind of suck. And I just keep my Grimoire out. I just keep my Grimoire out and give it a little alternate fire tap whenever I feel like I need it. One, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4. That's why I was tempted to put 4 casting shards, maybe. Like, I could do that combo quicker. I think I'm gonna reset my 2. I reset my 2 right there. I was getting a little bit, I saw my energy, like, not being at full all the time. I still had like 300 energy. I was just I got a little bit scared. I had to reset it. I probably could have lived with it, but... I like Ember, though. She's pretty fun to play. The amount of overguard you get from her 3 is not as big as some Warframes. Like, Frost, you get enough overguard where it's kind of like a 2-shot in Steel Path Endurance. But Ember, not so much. Ember's overguard is still like a 1-shot, basically. So, you could really only count on it for like an extra shield gate. So... I think like we technically can get our overguard to like 20-something thousand, I think, when we're at max max mult augmented stacks. Oh, here we go. Let me switch to my Brahma. Well. Where'd he go? Oh, he's right there.
Extraction is available if you need it.
Yeah, so Ember is a wizard. She uses the Grimoire to actually very good effect. I tried to make a lot of builds like be efficient with the Grimoire, and they're always very clunky, but Ember, not so much. You just hold it because there's really no reason to actually shoot your weapons. Yeah, this is a very big tile set right here. Our range, because of overextended, is really good. But if you wanted to like hit from one side to the other, you would need overextended and stretch. So you would replace Augur Secrets and put stretch there, but then you would probably want to use Brief Respite in the aura slot over corrosive projection. So like that's the differences you could do if you wanted to use stretch. That'll let you hit in these bigger tile sets like across them. I mean, you still have a very big range, but it's not going to like hit like from one side to the other. I've only had to reset my 2 one time so far. I have a feeling maybe one more time I'll have to reset it, though. It hasn't gotten out of control yet, but I feel like it's going to. Right now, there's only one fire, and it's in my pants. No. Oh, sorry. This skin, this Ember skin, is so awesome. I love the assets that it has. I really do. I'm going to see if I can go the rest of the way without resetting my 2. So I've only reset it once so far. And it's because we're on like a rotation. We're actually pressing 3 like pretty often. So we're not staying at max heat for a long time. It's because we're doing 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4. So every time we press our 3, it gets us out of max thermometer. And I think that's why it's a little bit... Ooh, I'm getting stirred, my energy. Yeah, I'm going to reset. I reset it there. He's getting a little bit crazy. He was getting too hot for me. Alright, so I reset it twice. Ah, poor Cerberus, my little panzer. Take these wizard bolts. Oh, what the hell about my energy? I think I got unlucky picking up some. Got energy starved all of a sudden. There we go. I must have been flying too much in the air without actually being on the ground. I'm too high.
Did I not tell of this day? Did I not prophesy?
Alright, so we're at 10 minutes here. Let's find extraction.
We will all share in this
I think it's this way.
Hold out.
We're at 834 kills. Pretty decent. That's Ember. She's really fun to play. Very powerful. There's obviously a few like valid builds. The Roar build is a valid build for her too. It just gets built out differently because you have to start valuing duration more than you normally would. So Roar or Breach Surge I think is really powerful. They're just different builds. They're different builds, unfortunately. All right, that was the Ember build there, guys. I hope you liked it. If you liked it, consider giving it a like. If you haven't subbed yet, consider subbing, or tell me what I can do to earn your sub. And I hope you guys have an amazing day. All right.